Mornings.
Yeah.
Nothing, nothing quite works today. But that's fine. We're going to get around it. Right. So, today, Neuroccino, 9:30-ish today. Rules of the game. Anyone is welcome to come join us and present a paper. Just let us know in advance. And then we discuss it to the best of our knowledge. Today we have Hervé present, who is in Bordeaux, and he knows the drill, so he already shared the link to the paper.
Yes.
Yay, Hervé, whenever you're ready, take it away.
Okay, let's start. So yes, as usual, let's share the screen. This is the usual sentence you hear when you start a Zoom, and I need to find it where to share. Yeah, should be good.
Told you they keep changing it. Also, I just
Yeah.
saw a typo in our YouTube. It's not aging, it's a gingy.
Okay, so normally you should see it.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, so this is COVID-19 lockdown effects on adolescent brain structure suggest accelerated maturation that is more pronounced in female than in male. So I picked it up because a colleague of mine, friend of mine, was recommending this article, which is interesting because it's talking about brain maturation in adolescence, a topic I'm really interested in, and the difference between female and male. And also, now it's not, so we don't talk so much about it, but COVID-19. So it's a mixture of topics. So just to show you, where is it? It's here. Yeah. So even the New York Times was talking about it, saying that teen girls' brain age rapidly during pandemic study finds. Let's go back to the article. So as all of you know, the COVID-19 was, socially speaking, was a big thing. So due to the lockdown, the pandemic lockdown, there was a lot of effect and substantial negative impact on mental health in adolescents. And the topic, the subject of this article is that female are more adversely affected in male than male. So a lot of articles showed that looking at a disorder or even symptoms during during and after the pandemic lockdown. So where the female were more affected than male. And so, and during adolescence. So, as all of you know, adolescence is a dramatic, a critical period where you have, psychologically speaking, emotional, behavioral, and social development. And it's also a period where a lot of neuropsychiatric disorder appear. And you have, for example, anxiety, depression, and behavioral disorders. So, so yes, so and during the COVID-19, so yes, again, female were higher risk than male of experiencing internalizing symptoms, anxiety, and depression. So, so the COVID-19, so this paper is not looking at the effect of COVID-19, but the effect of the lockdown of the COVID-19. And so adolescence is also a very interesting period because you have brain maturations happening. And so, for example, you have an increase of white matter. You have a decrease of gray matter and cortical thickness, for example, which is mainly due to myelination and synaptic pruning. Okay, so lucky them, they started an experiment in 2018 where they wanted to look at the adolescents' brain maturation, and COVID-19 happened. So, so that was an opportunity, let's say that like that, to study the effect of COVID-19 on the lockdown, the social effect of the pandemic lockdown on the maturation of adolescents. Let's go directly to the method to see their sample. So what they wanted to do was a longitudinal study. So normally what you do, so let's go there. Okay, just a point here. They wanted to do what they call, so you have different way of conducting to look at age effect. You can do a cross-sectional study where you study different subjects at different age, or if you want to be more precise, you do a longitudinal study where you take one subject or several subjects, but you follow them in time. But it takes time to do that. So what you can do is a cross-sectional sequential study where you take different subjects at different age and you follow them with a longitudinal design. The advantage of that is you can cover a larger time in a shorter time. So it's what they wanted to do. So they did that for different subjects from 9 to 17. So they started to recruit people from this age, and they wanted to do a follow-up several years later. But several years later was the COVID. So they get to shut down everything. But they collected the first sample. And after the COVID, they collected another, not another sample, but another point for the same subjects. The point here is that they didn't use the longitudinal design of the study, but they separate their sample in three groups. The reason for that is they wanted to do to use normative modeling. Normative modeling is a statistical tool that you build a model, and after you can pick a subject and try to fit this subject in the model, in the norm. So one of the more current version of it, if we go there, so mainly used in, for example, in pediatric. So when you have kids, you want to know if they are in the norm. So you have these graphs where you have the age of your kid, and you want to see if the weight is normal. So you put your subjects, your kid in this graph, and you say, I'm in the norm. So the norm is here, the 50 centiles. And if you deviate, you can see how much the subjects, the kid deviate, and if you need to do something. So that is normative modeling. So you build a model and you try to fit the subjects in it. So it's why they selected 4 groups. So the first group was for training the model. So subjects from 9 to 17, 87 subjects. They had the second sample for validating the sample. So 22 subjects. And they had the test sample. So the first and the second was before COVID. And the third one was the post-COVID sample with the same age range for the 3 groups. Okay, it's good. So they did that, 3 groups. And let's see what they did. So here's an example. For example, so they have T1 weighted MRI for all the subjects. They did cortical parcellation with free surfer. So they have cortical thickness for all subjects and for all regions of the brain. And so here's an example for the fusiform gyrus. Here's the training model. So you derive this blue line and red line for male and female. You validate it with the validating the other sample, the pre-COVID sample. So you see that is fitting well. And you test it on the post-COVID sample, where you can start to see for this region that you deviate for male and women. So what they did that for all the regions. So is here you have the different graphs for different regions. So let's take the panel A, which is the regions that are deviating for women. So the norm is 0. And as you can see, for the physiform, left and right, the left insular, the superior temporal gyrus, the entorhinal, and the bank of the STS, you have an acceleration. So you have a reduction of a cortical thickness in women, female, and that is considers when you have reduction of cortical thickness during maturation during adolescence. It's mainly acceleration. And that is the different regions for women, and they found only 2 regions for men. So the same thing, the norm is here, and you have the blue, you have a deviation on the left, which is the reduction of cortical thickness for the left and right lateral occipital. So another way to represent it is the different regions where you have a deviation from the norm. For the woman, for the female, panel A, and for the men in panel B, where you can see the occipital regions. So again, here are so you have the different cortical regions. Let's put it in the way you can see both of them. So here you have the females in red, and in blue you have the males. And you have the effect size. So again, you have the norm in 0, and when you deviate, you can see all these regions for women are deviating toward an acceleration, a brain accelerated cortical thickness maturation. If you take this threshold, which is pretty important, 0.5, you have 43% of the regions that are deviating. For male, it's less obvious, but you can see here, for example, the 2 lateral occipital regions. So another thing they did is they compile all these regions together to do another kind of normative modeling. They did the brain age, thing, where you take all the measure of cortical thickness and you derive the age of the brain. So you don't use the age of the subjects to model the age of the subject. So you have a brain age. And you can look at the difference between the real age and the brain age. And so they did that for the sample. And as you can see, for the post-COVID sample, you have an acceleration of age. So you have a difference between the real age and the brain age of 4 years for the female. So acceleration of 4 years and something. And for male, there is an acceleration of 2 years, 1 years and something. So that are their results. So they try to discuss it, what they are saying. So yes, so what they say first is that mainly the main regions they identified in women were what we call social brain regions, where, for example, the fusiform is implicated in processing faces and facial expression. The insula is playing a role in processing social and emotional experiences. The superior temporal gyrus is really well known for being involved in social interaction. So they are saying that, and it makes sense in a way, that the regions affected by social event are social brain regions. After they tried to explain why this acceleration, so they have different hypotheses. The first one is the stress acceleration hypothesis. So it's poses that when everything is well, you take time to mature, to develop. But when something is happening, it's better to shorter the maturation phase. So you try to protect in this way emotional circuit and also learning and memory regions. Another hypothesis is the mechanistic, what they call a mechanistic hypothesis, is due to the stress, which is well known, the effect of stress in general. So you have release of cortisol and a release of or a production of uh, glucocorticoid in the brain, so which is good in a short time, but if it is chronic, and in this case it was a long period, it can affect or it can be deleterious for the brain regions. After that, they discuss the difference between men and women. So their explanation for that, the first was the effect of glucocorticoids are not the same in male and female, and studies have shown that it's more affecting females than women. And it's mainly due to the combination of sex hormone and stress hormone that are not behaving well together. The other explanation is also the type of stressor. So in the case of the pandemic lockdown, it was affecting the peers relationships. And what they say is that peer relationships are of vital importance for development of self-identity, and female rely on these relationships for emotional support more than males. Okay. And they have some limitations. So first of all, the sample size is pretty small. So the training set is only 80 subjects. The testing sample is only 42 subjects. So rather small. They don't have behavioral data that they could use to see if the acceleration of maturation is related to any behavioral things. The thing here, yeah, they say it's not very specific. For me, it's not a big deal. They have a large range, which is for me good, because too specific will be bad too. Something I'm struggling with for this article is they wanted to look at the effect of the pandemic lockdown on male and women, men and women, but so they use this normative modeling to look at men and women, but I would have liked to have a simple sex by age interaction, because here they didn't test the difference between men and women. So they look at men and look at women. They say it's bigger here and smaller here, but they don't directly compare them. So when they discuss it and they say they cannot do it with the normative modeling thing, they try to do it in a way. They did separate models for men and women. They found the same thing, but I would like really to have a very simple age by sex interaction to see if it is something really happening, or if it is just a matter of in the variability of the difference. So that's it for me. I'm happy to answer questions if I can.
Thank you, Evie. Very interesting, and I totally agree with you. The sex by age interaction would have been very informative, amongst other analysis. But I give the floor to Lilith first.
Thank you, Ari, for presenting this paper. I have a question. So this paper was published recently, and do they accounted for people who had the vaccine or not? Because there is a paper was published, I think, in Science that says that there might be some changes in menstrual cycle short term for females. And we know also that menstrual cycle changes, there are some growing evidence, changes structure and function of the brain across the hormonal cycle. So I was wondering if they mentioned this or discussed this, because this is a recent paper and these papers were published before. So
Yeah, no, they don't talk No, they don't talk about the vaccine at all. So as I said, it was the collection of the data was 2018, and after it was, I don't see when the post-COVID was done. So it could answer part of the question, but yeah, evaluation. No, they don't talk about it. I don't see when, but yeah, for sure, yeah, could have an effect on this effect, and yeah, what you say, the menstruation and the difference between men and women could have been affected, but yeah, I don't discuss it at all.
Okay, thank you.
Chris is next.
One thing that I'm not sure I understood because it's about the maturation. So you showed with the plot that when you try to predict the age of the participants, you predict a higher age. But I'm more familiar with older populations. But in that case, is maturation good or bad?
Acceleration, maturation is not good. So you have a norm. If it is too fast, it's not good. If it is too slow, it's not good either. So you need to be in the proper thing. So yeah.
Right. So that means that they have a difference in maturation of the regions that are typically associated with social stuff.
Yeah.
So their interpretation of that, is it that because also there is a difference between men and women, so is it that that means that women suffer more from the deprivation of the social than men?
Yeah, it's what they claim. So that they say that yeah, the stress they undergo is more important for a female, and that has an effect on the brain regions, which could these regions are in the social brain, so that could explain why these regions are more affected than others, because they need to mature faster for the social thing. So that yeah.
I mean, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Thank you.
Related to that, do we know anything about the social status during lockdown? Because one could also argue that the women were called more to help out around the house or help with chores, those kind of stuff. So their life or their experience during COVID, during the lockdown, may have been quite different, leading to those differences as well.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to see. Maybe they are doing it because when I see this article, they don't use the longitudinal data, so I'm thinking they may be planning another study to look at that. So, and it's true that if you have difference in experiencing the lockdown, it will affect the way the brain maturation is happening. So yeah, it could. It's what they say in the limitation. They don't have behavioral data, but I'm pretty sure, yeah, they could at least do questionnaires, some questionnaires to see how it affecting them, and
yeah, the behavioral data could be quite a confounding variable in this analysis as well. And then I may have missed it, but do they interpret why in men they only see the occipital lobes change?
Yeah, no, it's the occipital. What they say about the occipital, it's true. I didn't talk about it.
Because I find the explanation that women are more social and therefore we see changes in the social brain, and men are less social and that therefore we don't see any changes in the brain quite black and white, given that we're talking about a global.
It's really basic things. They say that is implicated in the visual field. It play a significant role in the processing of faces. Okay, which is yeah. And what they say about men, it's in terms of social effect, they say that they are less affected by peer relationship. In a way, they focus on something else, so they are less affected by deprivation of social interactions. So they pay to video games and they don't care. I'm just
Yeah.
making that up, but yeah, yes, this is the main point of the difference between the social.
I'm blanking on the English word, but plakativ is the German word. It's like it's very stereotyped in a way.
Yeah, maybe yeah.
Anyways, I don't want to take the time for Müge and Chris. So Müge, you were first.
Yeah, thank you. So I was curious because they think these, differences in the cortical matter density is caused by the stress hormones, glucocorticoids, right?
Yeah.
So this, I mean, as far as I know, this, it should have affected the hippocampus the most, right? These, if you think about the density of these receptors,
so
but they don't report anything about that.
Yeah, because so they report some stuff in the entorhinal cortex. So which is because the hippocampus. Here in this paper they talk about only cortical thickness. So they don't have data. I'm pretty sure they have data, but they don't report them for the subcortical regions. But yeah, talking about glucocorticoids, it would be really interesting to see the subcortical regions or hippocampus, and so maybe they have it and they don't want to talk about it because yeah, when you do free surfer, you have the cortical measures, but also the subcortical volumes. So it's another paper maybe, but yeah.
And another lame question maybe, but in the title they say maturation of the brain, and maturation doesn't necessarily sound like a negative thing to me, but it's why do they pick that word instead of saying calling aging, like brain aging, right?
Because it's adolescents.
I'm not familiar with the terminology,
Yeah, because the processes. So we are looking at to adolescents, and so the processes are not aging yet. So it's more like they say myelination and cortical and synapse pruning. It's more not aging things, but more maturation. So it's why they call it accelerated.
Because when I first read the title, I said, "Oh, okay, yeah, that doesn't sound too bad." But
yeah, it's not. Yeah, the reason why we picked. So my colleague is interested in autism, and there is this hypothesis that so in autism there is an acceleration of maturation when you look at these kids. So it's why we picked this article. So there is a lot of hypothesis about the acceleration of maturation is not good at all.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you. Yeah.
And time for a final question, Chris.
So one thing about the interpretation or the stereotypical interpretation of, well, men don't really care, not having a social environment, so it didn't change their maturation. But the other thing they could say is that even outside of lockdown, men have a much smaller social environment, so being deprived of it doesn't change from the norm, because the norm is bad already. So that's why that could be why there is no or not much differences between the norm of male and the COVID lockdown male.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, I mean they don't explain it like that, but I think they think that this effect is due to that. So and it's one of the study, and they report two other studies that found the same thing. So it seems to be very something really robust in a way. And also when I was listening to you, it's also maybe society also, we need to make that in the loop, that society is maybe in a lockdown, maybe men, so like bias, gender bias, things are not so made in a way to make men maybe more in charge or more in control than women. So that can also explain why these effects could be.
But that's a good paradigm to study the differences, because basically you have a more controlled social environment. So then that could be a way to study the differences between men and women, because there's been a lot of studies that show, for example, that women are more resilient to some mental problems, because well, one explanation is that they have a richer social environment that help them cope, that men don't have in general.
Yeah.
Also, social connectedness is linked to healthier aging and postponing like not neurodevelopment, neurodegenerative disorders. So that's an impact you might just see accelerated here. But then even if men are less social, for argument's sake, life still dramatically changed, because it could also be a function of communication, how you nurture your social connections. That maybe being on the phone is enough compared to meeting in person, and therefore the impact was less, for example. There's a lot of confounding variables that would be interesting to.
But you don't have groups, for example. I mean, Zoom, but I don't think the kids were doing Zoom. So if they were on the phone, they were always on one-to-one, whereas at school and outside, you would have groups of friends. I don't know if that affects.
Yeah. Then where you live too. I mean, so it depends.
Yeah.
There is a lot of, as Steph was saying, a lot of variables. So if you live in a very close, with very close neighbors, you can still see them. So if you are in the middle of nowhere, it's complicated. So
and also country by country, right? Like some countries allowed you to create a bubble with a neighboring family, some countries didn't.
Yeah.
So there's huge effects on that. Then also the effect of having siblings versus not having siblings, because then you still have social interactions at home with somewhat of a peer, depending on the age difference. All of that should matter in the end.
Yeah. So this study was done in the Washington state, so which is not so bad in terms of where you are. So, but can depend on.
That's interesting. Let's see if they follow up with a more
specific
enriched data set and specific questions. Yes. Thank you for presenting. That's all the time we have. Next week, Philip is going to present. And until then, have an exciting week in science. Bye.
Bye.